video,
Okay.
and that'll get a 4 to 5 minute video out of it.
Do you want me to talk to him or you?
Talk to, well, the other
tell me.
girl talk to.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Okay,
To
Yeah.
good.
Yep.
I'd rather do that. But just because this seems weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like somebody's tapping in on our conversation.
Yeah.
I hope it's not the FBI.
Oh my gosh.
We could use,
Got nothing to hide, man.
I don't know about that.
I'm pretty open book.
Alrighty.
So,
Hello, everybody. This is Bill Sparks from Gilead Ministries, and this is another episode of Mini Views. Time we take time to talk to one of our clients, one of our volunteers, or one of our staff members. And so today we're talking to Mr. Don Wickline, and Don has had a journey with cancer, and we're going to talk a little about that and some of the things that he and his wife Joy experienced. So, Don, tell us about the time that Joy was diagnosed, and tell me a little bit about what you guys felt at that time.
well, we retired from doing mission work in Kentucky in August and came home, and she went for a routine mammogram, and they found a mass, and that occurred in September. So immediately after that, and we looked at that as actually as a grace from God, because I was able to be with her through all of the treatments. So that worked really well. Was diagnosed with a pretty aggressive form of cancer, which required, and it was metastatic, so it did require that she have the chemo as well as radiation treatment. Went through several weeks of that. The toughest part through that whole time frame is from you have a lump to is it cancer, and the waiting for that. And that's where friends from church and guys like you guys can come in and be some consolation. That's the toughest time. And even though hers was diagnosed as a very aggressive type, it was still a relief to get that diagnosis so that we knew what the path would be. So several months of that, Joy had also included surgery, and that was done here in Marion by, can I name it? By Dr. Rex, fantastic guy, and he did the surgery, and there were several complications, including hospital stays and different things there. Joy had a really tough time going through that, but I would think that most folks probably didn't realize that. She wasn't one to complain. So as we go through there's those are kind of the nuts and bolts of it. The emotions around it are huge. All of a sudden, a person who, this is going to get emotional. Who was a rock in our family, all of a sudden was the one who was sick. So went through that process, and again, like I said, lots of support. Marion General Hospital did a fantastic job. I can't speak highly enough of the cancer center here in Marion. The nurses there, the doctors there, they're amazing. So Joy went through that over about a year and a half as we went through the whole process, got everything all done, and received the all clear diagnosis. The treatments were great, are successful, and so then we went through that, and in April of last year, she received the all clear from the doctor. They removed her port, and she had one more doctor's visit on May 2nd, and at that one she was declared completely cancer-free and ready to go, and then had a sudden heart attack that night and passed away that evening. So did have some side effects from the treatments, neuropathy in her feet and things like that. None of them were debilitating. So I guess that's kind of in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. And then the impact on the family, Joy did everything she could to make that as minimal as possible during her treatments. if you knew Joy, you would know that without me telling you. That she was very strong. I never saw her faith waver. I'm sure she had some moments of doubt, but I never saw it waver. And so, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Basically in a nutshell.
Yeah. So, obviously you're coming this time, you think things are moving in the right direction, and then immediately upon this day, you have to face this unfortunate reality that God graduated her to heaven. So what's going through your mind that day and the next day?
Well, the first thing is that, and I'll share with folks is that, I guess two things that a person who's just experienced that does not want to hear. The first one is, are you okay? Because you're not. And that just triggers you to lie to people and tell them, yeah, I'm all right. Well, you're not. And I can't imagine anybody being okay. The next one is people who say, that's God's will. I'm not a theologian, but I don't believe God does those things to us. I believe the world does that to us. Stuff happens. And so I would have to believe that God wanted her to go through that, and I don't. So she passed away in her sleep. It was immediate. There was some trauma involved, but not much. But then it was, now what do we do? We have custody of our 4 grandchildren, or did have it. 3 of them have graduated from high school now, so we just have the one at home. But now we're dealing with how, for them, even more difficult than for me, because they didn't just lose their grandmother, they lost the person who was really their mom. And so, and then they were stuck with me. So as we have gone through that process, huge loss. And you can probably sense it's not stopped hurting.
Yeah. And that's actually my next question is, it's obvious there's a lot of stuff that Joy was responsible for, was the like you say, the rock, so many things. I mean, my times of interacting with her through the United Methodist Church and some of the other different things, just a real person of faith, a real strength, real encouragement. So then this is now in your life gone, and you said, like, you know, it's still something. So talk to me and others who are going through this loss period. What kind of things did you experience, and what kind of things would you say to encourage them?
Well, the things you experience is just immediately, initially, it's just shock. And that folks oftentimes will mean well, and oftentimes will just say silly things. And they don't mean to, so my advice would be, try not to take that at face value. Understand that folks care, and they're trying to help you. Doesn't always feel that way. Honestly, it doesn't. But folks mean well most of the time. I can't imagine how someone can go through that without a church family. I don't know how you would do that. We have a small group at our church that we're part of, Joy and I are part of, and very close friends with them, and more than friends, family. And so lean on those folks. And it's okay to not be okay. I think I read that in a book somewhere, because you're not okay, and don't have to hide that. And so, because the inclination, especially us guys, we want to be the tough guy and say, I can power through this. Well, no, you can't. And if you try to, it's just going to make it. You're just delaying the inevitable. You have to deal with it. Obviously, I haven't completely yet. I don't know that there's a timetable. And you can read all kinds of books that tell you all kinds of dumb stuff. I think that your close friends, your church family, your faith is what's important. I'm not saying don't read the books. I read them all. And some of them even had good stuff in them. But I can't tell you which ones will matter to each individual. But there is some there is some stuff out there that helps. But the main thing is that God didn't do it to you. The world did it to you. And they are better off. We're not. And I think the wavering faith, the joy would have been disappointed in me if I let that happen.
So through the process of her journey with cancer, through your own process of grief, we've had an opportunity to text back and forth, different things going on. What has been encouraging from Gilead that you've received, or things that you've gotten or interacted with?
Regular contacts through texts, and I'd say almost immediately you would text me almost daily for quite a while. I think it was daily for quite a while. It helps to know somebody else cares. It helps a lot. The easy thing to do would be to crawl into a shell somewhere. Because I had grandchildren at home that I was responsible for, that wasn't possible. My youngest had fallen and torn both ACLs, so she was in a wheelchair at the time. And so there was busyness that had to be taken care of. So cards, regularly got cards, phone calls. It is helpful to have something that keeps you from hiding under a rock, because that is the inclination. At least it was for me. That it's again, back to that, it's okay to not be okay, and to know folks cares is really helpful. So that's Gilead was one of those folks sources, and then my church and my small group would be the other ones. So, but pretty much always for us, it was a Christian-based response that was most helpful.
So a few years ago, you're done with your job and you're retiring and you're doing the things you're doing, and you look in the mirror and you see Don. The question is, this morning when you got up and looked in the mirror to see Don, who's Don today?
Well, I was a kind of guy, and Bill, we worked together for years, was a project-oriented, get-her-done kind of guy. And don't let feelings be very obvious. Just go do your stuff. That changed on May 2nd. So the Don today is probably more, definitely more emotional. Definitely less sure of daily stuff. Not less sure of God. Not at all. Or Christ. Not at all. But we were making plans for way out in the future. And now I make plans for next week. And that's only because you got to buy groceries more than a day at a time. I think that's the biggest change. I don't know that more compassionate is probably not the word, but more willing to. Well, an example is I didn't like hugs for a long, long time. I would stiffen up and just didn't care for that. I've had so many hugs now that it doesn't bother me anymore. So, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Anything you'd like to add that I've not asked about?
I guess I would just say that if the process through the cancer treatments, there are some amazing people in the cancer community here in Marion that do some amazing work, and lean on them. They're great people. And then your faith community, let them help you. Immediately following Joy's death, they offered to have a meal train to bring in food. I've got two teenage granddaughters, well actually a teenage granddaughter and then one who's in her early 20s living at our house, and I didn't think we needed anybody to bring in food. However, during the process I found out that the people bringing in the food, it was less important that they were bringing food than it was that I was talking to people that cared. That was the more important thing. So allow people to help you.
It's been another episode of Many Views, and want to thank you for taking time to tune in and to learn more about those that we serve and those that serve alongside of us. God bless.